12 laps, 16th place. Okay, get ready. Go! Well done, Greg. Good start. That lap was a 140.57. Is now 0.48. Okay, Greg, hold your nerve, just keep it smooth, no mistakes.
Hey, want to see more of the great things we have coming up? Remember to subscribe.
New fastest lap for Nielsen, 1:36.52. Place. The gap behind is now 0.8. behind. The gap's now 0.9. Alright Greg, don't let this car distract you. Katayama is leading the race. The gap to Brabham ahead is now 9.6. Has increased to 0.8. to go. You've just done a 1:40.00. That's your quickest lap. One more to go. Your lap times are improving. The gap behind is now 1.1. That's it, we're done.
There's that long-standing meme that FIA stands for Ferrari International Assistance, because Ferrari always seems to get a little bit more help compared to other teams. There's these little bit of assistances, little bit of a financial thing, or just, cases of turning a blind eye that the other teams wouldn't necessarily get. And while we think it's a bit of a meme, are there actually any blatant cases of Ferrari getting a little bit of a helping hand? And there is one that stands out. The 1960 Italian Grand Prix. Now moving into the 1960s, Formula One was in a transitional period. Front engines were dying. It was the last time the Indy 500 was part of the calendar, and this was also the last year of the 2.5 litre engine formula. And there were a couple of smaller engines on the grid, such as the 1.5 litre flat 4 used in the Cameradi Porsches, and also the 2.4 litre V6 coming out of Maranello. And the vast majority of the engines being used at this time were either inline 4s or inline 6s. Ferrari was the only constructor using a V configuration. And Ferrari had got this V6 in its 246 model, which first debuted in 1958. The engine itself was a dyno with a power output of around 275 horsepower, which is a tiddly amount compared to what we know today, but at the time it must have been an absolute animal to drive on those skinny tyres. And while it was the first V6 in a Formula One car, that engine was fitted, as per Ferrari tradition, in the front. And in that 1958 season, Mike Hawthorn won the title. But around the late 1950s, the constructors started to fiddle with putting the engines in the rear, starting with the Cooper T43 back in 1957, and this allowed for cars to have better traction, better centre of gravity, a narrower front end for aero, and other things like that. But Enzo and Ferrari stubbornly stuck to putting the engine in the front, because, well, Ferrari, and, engine power always wins, right? And while Ferrari had indeed won in 1958, Jack Brabham in his rear-engine Cooper won the championship in 1959, while Ferrari was in second. The rear-engine revolution had truly got underway, and by 1960, if you wanted to win, you had got to have a rear-engine car. But the Italians still whacked them in the front, although there were some of the privateer teams also using front-engine designs, the Lotus 16 being one of them, although the 18 was rear-engine, and the 16 was developed for use in Formula 2 as well as Formula 1. And in the 1960 season, Ferrari was getting hammered. The car was now 2.5 seasons old and, well, obsolete. The rear engines had now really taken over, and following that season's Indy 500, Jack Brabham won 5 races in a row, taking the top spot at Zandvoort, Spa, Reims or Rem or Rom, I don't know how it's pronounced, and also Silverstone and the Portuguese Grand Prix at Boa Vista. And by this point, Jack Brabham had already won the World Championship, so it just left the rest of the season for everybody to fight over what scraps remained. Ferrari had gone without a victory all season. That's not good. They had, however, in the background been developing another car for the 1961 season, the 246P, which was a mid-engine version of that 1960 car, 1958 car. It was used a couple of times during the season, but it scored no wins, no poles, no fastest laps, and, no points, really. So noticing how things were going, the Italian racing authorities decided to have a play with how they were going to put on this race. Jack Brabham had already won the world title, so there was nothing left to fight for. So why not try and manipulate the event to exploit the one thing that Ferrari had over everybody else? Straight line speed. They changed the circuit layout from the boot-shaped circuit we know and love, minus the chicanes, and also added on the absolutely mental oval as well. Now, there was already the Indy 500, which has a banking of 9 degrees, but the Monza banking was 21 degrees. You might have seen this being exaggerated by racing drivers every year for the Italian Grand Prix, as they use it to get some cheap Instagram shots. So in total, this track was 10 kilometres in length, and cars would pass the start line twice on every lap. They would start the race in the spot they start the race now, on that front straight, and then blast off towards Curva Grande with no chicanes to slow them down. They might dab the brakes slightly to get through what is a flat-out corner today, but the first of only 2 real braking points would be as they reached the first of the 2 Lesmo corners. Brake, down a couple of gears, turn right again, and then begins the return to the finish line. Ascari is a left-hand kink at this point, and again a dab of brakes, but that's about it, and then up towards Parabolica, the second braking point. This is taken as it is today, but on the exit the track hangs right slightly and you pass by the pit garages, and there's straw bales separating the 2 lanes of traffic. Then it's right foot to the floor and round the oval, taking the 21 degrees of banking at speeds in excess of 160 miles an hour and not letting up at all. Super long gear ratios required, and the oval was bumpy as hell, probably on par with somewhere like Sebring Sunset Corner today. And then the oval ends, spitting you out onto the start-finish straight, and you do another lap. 10 kilometres, with over 90% of the lap at full chat. And we're still about 5 or 6 years away from Jackie Stewart's safety crusade at this point, but this wasn't a sport for the weak-hearted to start with. The British teams, when they saw what they were going to be racing on, boycotted the event altogether. And we've seen races boycotted before. The 1982 San Marino Grand Prix stands out as part of the FISA FOCA war, which is something I need to look at in a little bit more detail again at some point. And there's also the boycott due to apartheid in South Africa, which was back in 1985 or something like that. But the reason the British teams boycotted the race is that they were claiming that the Monza Oval was no longer suitable for Formula 1 cars. The last time they raced on the oval was 1958. Only 7 cars finished, and while 3 cars retired in that race due to accidents, the others retired due to something going wrong on the car. Engine, clutch, gearbox, transmission and suspensions all braking as the cars ran full throttle and over the bumps too often for those parts to handle. So with all the British teams not racing, the organisers had to fill the grid with Formula 2 entries to prevent it looking like Indianapolis 2005. Ferrari filled the grid with as many cars as it possibly could, and only 16 drivers made the event, with Ferrari, Castellotti, Maserati and Porsche being the only entrants on the grid. And there were, it has to be said, customer Cooper entries there, but none of the main teams, so Lotus, Cooper, Vanwall, they just weren't there. Richie Ginther led away from the start, but Phil Hill eventually overtook him. From there, it was pretty much a procession. Ferrari won the race with a 1-2-3, with Hill, Ginther and Willy Mayrès filling the podium, and Ferrari ending up with 4 drivers in the top 5 as Wolfgang von Trips finished 5th, with Giulio Cabianca finishing in between him and Mayrès. Mayrès. We'll stick to it. Von Trips, however, was in a Formula 2 car. It was the first win for an American driver on a road course since the inception of the World Championship in 1950, and would also be the last win for a front-engine Formula 1 car in a World Championship race. In 1961, a non-championship race was won by a front-engine car. Ferrari would eventually swallow its pride for 1961 though. Even though Enzo didn't like rear or mid-engine cars, the 156 Sharknose entered the sport the following year and dominated, culminating in a championship win for Phil Hill, although this was at the expense of the death of Wolfgang von Trips, who was killed at the 1961 Italian Grand Prix after an accident with Jim Clark. And the raging over Italians and where they should put the engines in their cars doesn't end there, as there was the famous blue Ferrari moment in the 1964 Formula 1 season, when there was a bit of a fight between Enzo and the Italian racing authorities over whether or not their Le Mans car should be front, mid or rear engined. But that's something for another day.
Great stuff. Keep it coming, mate. P5. It's now about 3.6 seconds. Okay, Greg, hold your nerve, just keep it smooth, no mistakes. The driver in front of us is Rampanelli. Maximise every lap. Let's salvage what we can. You've just done a 159.62. Don't let him get away. The car in front is Harman.
Hey, want to see more of the great things we have coming up? Remember to subscribe. Fastest lap for Stevenson, 156.69. 7th position, that's half distance. We think about 4 laps of fuel remaining. Slow in, fast out, keep the inside line covered. 26.68. 6th place. We estimate 3 laps of fuel left. Bad luck, Greg. Come on, don't let him get away. The guy in front is Harman. P7. 2 laps remaining. Only 2 laps of fuel left. Now 4.0 seconds. Okay, Greg, don't let this guy distract you. P6, last lap. You've only got enough fuel for this lap. That lap was at 1:58.06. Air temp's increasing. It's now 34 Celsius. 2 litres remaining.
This piece of paper arguably changed the course of Formula One history in the early 1990s. It's a letter from Michael Schumacher to Eddie Jordan that Schumacher's management and Eddie believe is the reason he got out of the contract he had with the team after just one race to move to Benetton. I've got Gary Anderson and Ed Straw with me to talk about this piece of paper. Gary, you were technical director of the team at the time, designing the beautiful Jordan 191 that Schumacher made his debut in. But I believe that before today you've not seen this piece of paper before. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. I obviously heard about some wording that was incorrect, and that was why we lost him as such. But at the end of the day, you know, the intention was probably never there, to be honest. Okay. Because in meeting Michael at the workshop and making a seat from him and sitting down talking to him, I never really got the feeling that, you know, he was going to be with us. There was too much attention paid whenever we got to Spa about Nelson Piquet's grid position. Little things just sort of added up in your mind. Okay, it's after the fact, you can put all those bits of the jigsaw together. But I think the intention was there even before the day at Spa for him, or the weekend at Spa for him. And it sort of means, I think, this was his way into Formula One. It was his way to show his true wares. That was important for him, but he did a great job for Jordan.
I'll read what's considered the key line of this letter. It says, "Dear Eddie, I confirm that if you enter me in the 1991 Belgian Grand Prix, which is of course what happened, and he started 7th and shone in a brief appearance in the race, I will sign," and this is the key bit, "I will sign a driver agreement with you prior to Monza in respect of my services in 1991, 1992, 1993, and subject to Mercedes' first option, 1994. The key change is that the word "the" was replaced with "a", and that's what Schumacher's management say. That meant they could sign any agreement with Jordan. I think the quote Willy Weber gave us years ago when Motorsport News first uncovered this was that they could have signed an agreement to visit Jordan's Silverstone factory twice and have lunch with Eddie or something like that. It could be any agreement. Can you believe that something so small can get you out of a contract?
Well, it's difficult to believe. I'm not a great expertise in legalese, but if you look at that there, Eddie at that point in time had a driver management company as well. So what Michael sort of says there, I think, is that I will sign a driver agreement with you. Right. He doesn't say I will sign a driver agreement with Jordan. So the wording is a bit strange, and I think probably you can fight it for that. But, you know, if the intent wasn't there anyway, and to be honest, you know, we had a great weekend at Spa with him, and if the clutch hadn't failed after the start, there is a very good chance he could have won the race, which would have been a fantastic story. But we had Yamaha engines for the next year, so probably the best thing for his career was to move on, because it definitely was it was a ship's anchor, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing, Ed. You wrote some pieces over the winter around Michael's 50th birthday about the early years that almost get overlooked. The Ferrari era is what defined Schumacher's career in the end, but he won 2 world championships with Benetton, who were not a championship winning team up to that point. Do you think that getting out of Jordan in the way that he did and getting to Benetton so quickly, did that define the early part of his career and perhaps even the later stages as well?
Well, certainly the early part. It got him into a championship winning situation much earlier than he otherwise would have done. Benetton was a team that was used to winning the odd race here and there, but it needed a driver capable of helping to lift them to the next level. The team itself was continuing to get better, and of course Schumacher won the Belgian Grand Prix in 92, won the Portuguese Grand Prix in 93, and then in 1994 there he was, world champion, and then winning again in 95. So it was the perfect move in a way for Schumacher, because it put him into a team that needed to get behind him, that couldn't go and sign a superstar driver in their prime. Of course Nelson Piquet was there, but very much on his decline, and in fact Schumacher's arrival kind of finished things off for Nelson Piquet in Formula One, who had actually won a race that year and won a couple at the end of the previous season. But it gave Schumacher that opportunity. It's right, here's a team that could amount to something, that could be a title contender. You're the young guy who's going to get out there, win the races, win the titles for us. And that was a great opportunity for Schumacher. And I think even if he'd retired for some reason, which would have been very odd, at the end of 95, he would stand not quite as highly as he does among the greats, but you'd still say, wow, this guy was sensational. What he did there was incredible. You might expect a driver who's been there, done that, to go to an emerging team and lead them to 2 championships. But for a driver who hadn't been there and done that, I think that's just testament to the quality of Michael Schumacher.
Now, we all know that Schumacher completely changed the game in terms of dedication, preparation, his ruthlessness, everything. Perhaps in this situation, was this an early example of the way he approached his career, in the fact that do anything you can to get yourself into a better situation immediately. Some drivers would say, I'll start at Jordan, I'll start with a good up-and-coming team, and I'll find my way in Formula 1, but not Schumacher. The second he's in Formula 1, he's through the door, as Gary said, and then it's get me to Benetton, get me in a race-winning car.
I think this is what we see from those kinds of drivers. In more recent years, Max Verstappen has done this, forcing himself into Toro Rosso, then forcing himself into the Red Bull A team. He wants to get there quickly. Michael Schumacher wanted the same thing. Jordan was a great team. 91 was an outstanding season, but it wasn't a team that could be realistically expected to contend for a championship in the medium term. Obviously, they started to win races. 98 was the first win. 99 was very, very strong, but he couldn't afford to wait that long, could he? He could see Benetton was an emerging team. He could see that was the place to be, went there, did the job, got into Ferrari. That's kind of why Spa 91 is the starting point for everything Schumacher achieved. He was a great driver. He'd, I'm sure, still have had success without that race, but that got him into Benetton quickly, changed the course of his career and changed the course of Formula 1 in the 90s, because there's no way he'd have been, in 94, the best driver on the grid, or regarded as it, had he either stayed with Jordan or, as the contract did allow, he could have gone, because he had a Mercedes contract, so he could have ended up at Sauber when they came into Formula 1 in 93. So, yeah, a huge thing. And I think that ruthlessness, that get me in a car that can win races, that can win championships because I'm ready, reflects his ruthlessness and also his confidence. Because some drivers might have liked to learn in an easier environment. Jordan, always a great team for young drivers to learn in. Expectations weren't super high, but he's like, no, I'm going to go where I can win because there's an opportunity. I'm going to show I can be world champion in a few years.
Now, Gary, contracts obviously weren't part of your bag. I'm sure they weren't in your job description that Eddie Jordan may or may not have given you at some point in your time at the team. So when did people like yourself and the people in the factory become aware that something was up contractually? You said you had a hunch from the start that maybe he wasn't that committed, but when did you get word back at Silverstone that maybe something really was up?
Well, it wasn't actually back at Silverstone. It was actually at Monza at the next race.
All right.
In the paddock on the Thursday, I believe, to be honest. That we started to, there's something going on, and Michael didn't show up, and we thought, what's happening here? And then through a few hours went past, and basically we discovered that it was still a bit of a fight going on between Jordan and Benetton, and Bernie was in the middle of it, Bernie Eccleston. So we ended up then swapping drivers basically, with Roberto Moreno coming to drive the Jordan. But that sort of happened overnight as such on the Thursday night ready for Friday. So Roberto coming in to jump in the Jordan, a car I'd never driven before, with no sleep overnight, worrying about his future. It wasn't the best environment, I must say, but it happened. And Michael, you're talking about talent there, Ed. Just from the first laps in the car at Silverstone testing, you knew he just had confidence in himself and his ability. And then you go to Spa, and at that time El Rouge was theoretically flat out, but we were a new team, and that's what you set your challenge as. As a new team, you wanted to see if you could take El Rouge flat out. And on the first day, on the Friday, we said at night to Andrea de Cesaris and Michael, you haven't been through El Rouge flat yet. Michael said, oh yeah, no problem, just getting confidence in the car. Andrea said, oh yeah, no problem. The next morning, Saturday morning, Michael was flat from the first lap, never lifted again. Andrea took, I think, until the last lap of qualifying before he did it. So, you could feel the confidence within himself, and it was very impressive.
Now, one of the things that Schumacher's then management team cited when MN spoke to them about this the first time was the Yamaha engines that Jordan had to run in 1992. It took away, or it certainly took the team a step backwards from where they were in the first season. Do you think that if Michael had been in the car, would anything more have been possible? Was that season always a little bit doomed just through the engine selection?
It was doomed for a couple of reasons, really. We, as a team in 1991, our job was to build a car during 1990, get it running. We got it running, I think it was middle of November, and then go racing in 1991. And then it's a whole different task whenever you've got to design a new car and race as well. And we were still a very small team. During 1991, we used to take 27 people away to a race meeting, and we had 28 people total, and we used to just leave one behind to switch the lights on and off. So we were still very small, trying to do far too much, to be honest. But the Yamaha engine was, in theory, our saviour as a team, because financially we were a bit strapped. 1991 cost the team a lot more money than Eddie had imagined. So it was very important to get some assistance from a works team. So although the Yamaha situation was not good for the performance of the team, it meant the team was still in existence, which is very important. Michael couldn't have made any difference with it, to be honest. We had two things. We had an engine that was, as I said earlier, a bit of a ship's anchor. Very inconsistent, blow up, if you blow on it wrong, it'll seize up, basically. And we had a gearbox problem as well. It took us quite a while to sort out. So, in general, no, Michael couldn't have made a difference.
Stand by. Okay. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2.
We needed at very short notice to get a replacement for Bertram, who was obviously unavailable. Schumacher was available this weekend. He had no other commitments. I've seen him in Formula 3, and I have this, or the team has this attitude to give youth a chance. We think it's a progressive way to see what the potential of Schumacher is for the future.
When you started this weekend, did you ever think that you would draw so much publicity as you are drawing now?
No, I don't think so.
But it's nice though, isn't it?
Yeah, sure, it's nice, but it's quite a lot.
You must be very happy with your results.
Yeah, sure, I'm really happy. But anyway, I have to say, with this car, you can do this qualifying time. You know, the car feels really good and it's a lot of fun to drive.
And for tomorrow, what is your strategy?
Finish the race. The start was quite perfect. I win 2 places, I think, and just after the hairpin, I got a problem with the clutch. I have no more traction, and I think something is broken in the clutch or in the gearbox. I don't know.
Circuits, there's no other that has the sheer charisma of Monza, because this is the one that's hosted top-level motor racing for some 70 years. It's where the all-time greats have thrilled the world, men like Caracciola, Nuvolari, Ascari, Moss and Fangio. Grand Prix history almost literally oozes from the tarmac. And it's where, today, the 2 top men who are vying for the World Championship renew their struggle for supremacy, Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell. They do so on the toughest track of the year, where reliability could decide the race after a thrilling final qualifying session in which Ayrton Senna took his 59th pole position, with Mansell desperately unlucky not to be there after being badly balked on his first attempt and losing a lot of time in heavy traffic on his second. But the excitement at Monza started on Thursday, when the motor racing world learned that the sensational newcomer, Michael Schumacher, had switched from the Jordan team with which he'd made his debut in Belgium to the Benetton team, in favour of Roberto Moreno, who had in turn taken Schumacher's place with Jordan. Confused? So was everybody. And sadly, the transfers involving team bosses Tom Walkinshaw and Eddie Jordan created a continuing legal wrangle which does Formula One no credit. But Schumacher has continued to astound by qualifying 7th in his first drive for Benetton. Michael Schumacher is the newest of the young Grand Prix drivers, but his new teammate, 3-time world champion Nelson Piquet, is the oldest, and he's been celebrating his 200th Grand Prix with mixed feelings, for it seems likely that he too will be an ex-Benetton driver next year. But what about Ferrari at Monza? the team the passionate tifosi cheer for so frenziedly. The prancing horse has yet to win this year and doesn't seem likely to do so here because motor racing's most famous team is in disarray.
In fact, we had a good car last year, and especially the team worked very well during the year. When I arrived in the team, they were listening to me, and they were very motivated to progress. And on the engine side, especially, we made a big step forward, and also on the chassis side. And then we reached the end of the season where our car was almost the best, or one of the best, with the McLaren anyway, and it was getting better and better. What the problem was, the people without a big experience of Formula One thought that when one car was competitive in the last race, it was for sure competitive in the first race of the next season, which is absolutely not true at all in modern Formula One. Even if I need some luck, I will take it, because especially at Monza, and also for me, I've never done a season without winning a race, except the first year at McLaren. But I would be surprised if I don't win one this year. But that would be very bad for me if I can't.
This is Murray Walker introducing the FIA Formula One World Championship in Dolby Surround and Q-Sound. Commentary by Murray Walker. Recorded at the Sound Company. Thank you for joining us for the Grand Prix.
Yes, indeed. Turn up the sound on your TV. We are only moments away from the start of the Grand Prix, coming live to you, and we have a 112,000 sellout here at this circuit. The track itself is a series of very similar sections with long straights, slow corners, and heavy braking zones. It's a circuit that track itself is a series of very similar sections with long straights, slow corners, and heavy braking zones. It's a circuit that requires stability under braking, low drag down the straight, and good traction on the exit of the corners. And as always, grid position is critical.
As usual, once the cars are in their grid positions, the lights will go on.
You're right there, Murray.
This is the critical time now. Straight down towards turn 1 they come. A fabulous sight. 22 cars fly down to turn 1. It's a beautiful start. Remember, anything happens in Grand Prix, that's put him down a place. He's lost a place. Look at that.
You're right there, Murray. They have to concentrate on two things. Trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the...
That's put him down. Remember, anything happens in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does.
They have to concentrate on two things. Trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the car behind at bay.
Totally unpredictable. What a fascinating season this is turning out to be. He's the fastest man on the track. That was an excellent... Remember, that's taken him. He's the fastest man on the track. That was an excellent lap. He's in a class of his own. Remember, anything happens in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does.
They have to concentrate on two things. Trying to pass...
He's the fastest... the fastest man on the track. That was an excellent lap. He's in a... Yes, the beauty of this race is that it's totally unpredictable. What a fascinating... That's put him down a place. He's lost a place. Remember, anything happens in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does.
They have to concentrate on two.
He's been overtaken. Oh! put him down a place. He's lost a place. Look at that. Remember, anything happens in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does.
They have to concentrate on two things: trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the car behind at bay.
He's the fastest man on the track. Yes! Yes, the beauty of this race is that it's totally unpredictable. What a fascinating season this is turning out to be. That 16th place shows the car. Remember, anything happens in that's put him down a place. He's lost a place. Look at that.
You're right there, Murray. They have to concentrate on two things. Trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the car behind at bay.
That's put him down a place. He's lost a place. Look at that.
You're right there, Murray. They have to concentrate.
That's a good improvement. I think we could see him in the point.
You're right there, Murray. The fight is most definitely back on.
Remember, anything happens in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does.
They have to concentrate on two things: trying to pass the car in front.
That's put him down a place. He's lost a place. Look at that.
You're right there, Murray. They have to concentrate on two things.
12th place, and they can be pleased with that. The car went well, and they can build on that performance.
You're right there, Murray. The fight is most definitely back on.
Yes, the beauty of this race is that it's totally unpredictable. Constructors' Championship. It's not enough to be lucky. He never, ever gives up. You've got to be good. And he is that.
You're right there, Murray. The fight is most...
He's the fastest man on the track. That was an excellent lap. He... He's been overtaken. Oh, that's down a position. Unbelievable.
You're right there, Murray. They have to concentrate on two things: trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the car behind at bay.
That's put him down a place. He's lost a place. He's been overtaken. Oh, that's down a position. Unbelievable.
You're right there, Murray. They have to concentrate on two things: trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the car behind at bay.
for position.
two things, trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the car behind at bay. Just coming up to our commentary position now.
He'll be very aware that races can be won, and he's off again. Remember, anything...
Okay, mate, unfortunately we have a penalty. You at the end of this lap, please. So pass through at the end of this lap.
This is unacceptable. This is unbelievable. Unacceptable.
He's been overtaken. Oh, that...
Just coming up to our commentary position now.
And he's off again.
coming up to our commentary position now.
He'll be very aware that races can be won, and he's off again. Taken. Oh, that's down a position. Unbelievable.
You're right there, Murray. They have to concentrate on two things. Trying to pass the car in front.
He's the fastest man on the track.
Just coming up to our commentary position now.
He'll be very aware that... And he's off again. Remember, anything happens in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does.
They have to concentrate on two things: trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the car behind at bay.
Man on the track. That was an excellent lap. He's in a class of his own. Remember, anything happens in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does.
They have to concentrate on two things: trying to pass the car in front and concentrate on two things, trying to pass the car in front and trying to keep the car behind at bay.
He's been overtaken. Oh, that's down. And once he crosses the line, he'll have only one more complete lap of the circuit to go.
You're right there, Murray.
And it's the last lap of the race. One more lap to go. There is the checkered flag. It's a win. He takes the checkered flag. He crosses the line to euphoric applause. session is over. What an incredible result for Formula One.
a fabulous race to watch. It was a fabulous race to be in. It was a great fight at the beginning between Ayrton, myself and Riccardo. I wasn't sure whether Riccardo was my teammate at one time or not, because he was pushing me very hard when I was right behind Ayrton. Then I decided to let Riccardo go, because I wanted him to duck and dive with Ayrton to use his tyres up. So I dropped back then just to conserve my tyres and my own airflow, which worked real good. And then I woke up a little bit when Riccardo got past. I thought, okay, fine, I better go for it now. And then Riccardo immediately obviously had a gearbox problem, which made him spin. And then it was between Ayrton and myself again. And then I think Ayrton ran into a little bit of a tyre problem, and I managed to squeeze by just before he went into the pits. And then it was a very hard race at the end, because I'd blistered, I think, all my tyres by this time.
I think it was a tough race, and I was not as quick as the two Williams, and I was struggling. I was struggling with them. They were pushing me. They were pushing me at the beginning, and it was difficult. But then Riccardo got by, managed to get by. Then he had a problem. And Nigel was right there, and he managed to get by the same place again. And from there on, I couldn't follow Nigel. I knew I had some tyre problem anyway, so I decided to stop. And it paid off, because otherwise I would have fall back a lot, and I wouldn't even have finished second. So it was a second place, very good.
So, a marvellous fourth win of the season for Nigel Mansell, ahead of Ayrton Senna, who finished only half a second in front of Alain Prost. Berger finished fourth just before he stopped, and a quite outstanding fifth place for Michael Schumacher in his debut drive for Benetton, with his teammate Nelson Piquet sixth in his 200th Grand Prix. And now the World Championship gap is down to 18 points between Senna and Mansell, with Alain Prost back to fifth as a result of his fine drive. Williams are 1 point closer to McLaren in the Constructors' Championship, but 15 is a big gap. 4 races to go. Mansell could still win his championship, and Williams could still win theirs. It's Portugal in 2 weeks' time, and Williams say they'll go well there too on BBC television. It was a superb Italian Grand Prix. All Italy loved it, and most of all, in their knowledgeable way, they loved the brilliant drive of their English hero, Il Leone.
can stop. That's good.